people who are now joining, um, I have been married for 20 years. Saying it sounds so weird. Like, honestly, I haven't gotten accustomed to saying it because, you know, being married for 20 years means basically you're old. It means basically you're old. Yeah. Yes, Pauline, you're going to have conflict with your in-laws as well. So yeah, so I have a lot of experience in marriage, my own, and also counseling married couples, counseling couples who are dating. And guess what? Most of the times when people come to my husband and I for counseling, or they come to me individually or him, they come because there's some sort of conflict in their relationship that they cannot resolve. So I am speaking to you today with a wealth of experience and knowledge, personal experience, and even experience, you know, dealing with counseling people who come to us. My husband and I are pastors. For those of you who are new, this call, lovely Elizabeth, new and married, 23 years. Elizabeth beat me back, right? So Elizabeth can give us some advice too. So the advice that I'm going to give you today is not only going to come from my experience and from counseling, it is also going to be coming from the Word of God, from the Bible. Um, I try to live my life by God's standards and by His. I always say I don't like saying rules, but I call it advice because God can't make you do anything you don't want to do. How many of you all, because of your own life, you've come to that conclusion? God don't force nobody to do anything, and He can't make you do nothing you don't really want to do. So the Word of God is basically advice for your life to experience a better quality of life. Advice that a lot of people don't take, right? But it's what's going to make your life more peaceful, more enjoyable, more fruitful, healthy relationships. But a lot of times we dismiss God's word. Married for 2 years and I'm welcome, right? 2 years, that is somebody that's basically still a honeymooner. 2 years, you're still in the honeymoon phase, if I may say so myself, right? So lovely. So let me start. And I want to start by saying, normally I would always start off with some natural truths, and then I would go into spiritual things, right? Um, this time I'm starting with a couple scriptures because I believe that even if you don't believe in God, these scriptures that I'm going to mention here, I'm not going to go into them in detail, will make sense to you and help you in your marriage and in any relationship where there's conflict and you're trying to resolve it, right? Any relationship. And so, first thing I would say, ladies who are married, and those of you who are on your way to being married, dating, and so on, when you get into marriage, your thinking should be, this is for life, right? I don't know of anybody who gets into marriage with the thought at the back of their mind, well, if this don't work out, I go just get divorced. I don't know. I don't know if anybody gets into, I don't know if there's anybody standing at an altar about to say their vows, right? You're standing at the altar about to say vows, and the priest is there. And in the back of your mind, you saying, man, if this don't work out, I could just call my lawyer friend so and just end this thing one time, right? When you enter in a marriage, especially on your wedding day and leading up to it, your thoughts are, this is going to be forever. This is my husband. This person is going to be a part of my life. Hopefully, you picture yourself growing old with the person. You picture yourself having children, um, building a house together, starting a business, doing something, being involved in a ministry. But those are the thoughts that you have getting into a marriage. When you get into a marriage, your thoughts are supposed to be, this is it. This is my, and nobody, again, nobody goes into a marriage with the thought in their mind. All right, well, this number one, let me see how this work. I will see how this first one work. And if it don't work, I will just go to number two marriage. I will just divorce here and then I will have a next husband. I will be number two and then number three. Nobody thinks that way. But ladies, the fact of the matter is, one in every two marriages, according to the stats, end in divorce. One in every two. So 1 in every 2 people who go by that altar and say those vows are at some point going to split up. That is a sad, sad reality. Or if perhaps they don't split up, they don't get a divorce, they stay together, but they're unhappy together. So you're boasting that you're married 20 years or 23 years or 25 years or 30 years, but it's 30 and 23, or let's say half of that 30 years or half of that 20 years, you're living in, you feel like you're living in a prison, you're unhappy, right? So half of the people who get married will end up separating or divorce. And a big percentage of that will also go on to husband number 2, or in some cases, husband number 3, right? So I want you all to think about that for me. Think about that. And I want you, this is what I want for you to also think about. Think about your husband as the Bible refers to him, which is somebody who has become one with you. Again, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Bible and familiar with scriptures and so on, but the Bible actually says that when you are married, that the two become one. The two become one flesh. It is no longer, you know, another woman like this. I know they know somebody didn't want to hear what I go and say, right? You see me, I'm independent. No man can tell me what to do. I am an independent woman. I want to go when I want to go, come when I want to come, as my own woman, right? Of course, you're your own woman, right? However, when you are getting married, now you now have to not only consider your own whole self, you have to consider your own whole husband, because you are becoming one with this man, right? The other thing I have come to realize, ladies, from counseling couples, many couples get into marriage not having a clue what they're about to enter. No clue, none. I mean, when they come to you like a year after and they start to tell you things, I was like, well, what you was expecting? You was watching too much, it's Hallmark. Anybody's watch Hallmark? Let me see all here. Hallmark. Of course, Diana. Well, I said the two shall become one flesh. Of course, the two shall become one flesh. How many of all this Lifetime? To me, all Lifetime movies gone psycho. Like Lifetime movies gone psycho now. It's always somebody stalking somebody killing somebody, right? But Hallmark, I think it kind of has a little more romantic. The end of the Hallmarks, somehow they end up a little better, right? So the people who get into marriage and after a year, they come and they tell you things that, and I am like shocked. Like, you didn't see this coming. What did you expect? You're going to start a life. You are starting a life, ladies, with somebody. You are sharing your every space with them. You're sharing the same bed. You're sharing the same bathroom. You're sharing the same toilet. In some cases, you're sharing the same cupboard. You have your clothes in the same cupboard. Come on. You must expect. Yeah, putting it's a lifetime cycle since 1990. It's true. You must expect, ladies, there to be some sort of adjusting period, and you must expect conflict. So you cannot go into a marriage thinking that you will not have conflict. Ladies, if you are not married, the married woman, I don't know, some of them married so long you may not be able to remember. But those of you who are married, and you know, tell me how soon after your wedding day there was a conflict, some kind of conflict. Talk to me. Put it in the chat. A conflict, something that was a little difficult to resolve. You had a little argument. How soon after that wedding day? Let me see in the chat. I'm real curious to see this. Wedding night self. Me too. Sharon, me too. Wedding day. Alicia, now I had no conflict on my wedding day. It was smooth and nice, right? But the night self, no, I lie. It was not conflict. It was not conflict. It's a story, but I can't give it. 2 weeks after, Suzanne said, during the honeymoon was my first conflict, during the honeymoon. So like, that'll be like 3-4 days after the wedding. 1 year after, that is impressive. 1 year after, Galaxy 7 saying the wedding night. Sarana said the next day. Right, let me see. I'm really curious to see more. How soon after? Many people, Candace say about a month. right? I'm shocked to see how many people say in the very day of the wedding or the night of the honeymoon or, within the first few days. Which for me, it was like before I said I do, oh gosh. For me, it wasn't like a big conflict to say, well, is that raw and you're vexed, but it certainly was a little contention. Certainly was. It was the first situation married where we disagreed on something and we were both adamant about it. And so we had to come to a middle ground, or else it would have ended up into a bigger thing, right? And that was during my honeymoon. So the fact of the matter is, ladies, those of you who are not married, you're going to face conflict sooner than you possibly think. If you could avoid it for as long as you can, that is wonderful. But in some cases, it's just, and it's normal. Conflict is normal. You have conflict with your children, your parents, your boss, your co-workers. But in that environment, if in the corporate environment, if there's some kind of conflict, you have a third party coming or whatever, and it has to be resolved because that's your job, and you have to be professional, right? But you have conflict in most environments that you in a group of people or you get close to people, there is going to be conflict, right? So conflict is unavoidable. So we started there, right? We are started there. Marriage, these two things I want you to think about, right? Your marriage is forever as long as you both shall live. That's what it says. No, it says, I like it better as long as you both live rather than till death do us part, right? Your marriage is forever. That is supposed to be your thought going into it. It doesn't work out that way all the time. Sometimes it cannot work out that way. There are some marriages that do need to end. I know coming from a pastor, some of your mouth probably open right now, because I don't know what is up with like divorces, this unpardonable. Some you have a man taking your head and rocking it up on a wall and doing the same to your children. Some marriages need to end, right? But marriage is forever. That marriages end because of sin, because of the hardness of man's heart, lack of compatibility. I don't agree that is a reason to get married, but that's like a whole other session that we could perhaps do. That's not a reason to get divorced, in my opinion. So you're starting off at the point where you're with this person forever. You're with this person forever. You're growing old with this person, and you are going to have conflict. So don't you think that you should know how to resolve conflict? And it's so sad. This is not something that is taught us. I don't know how many of you, your mother, sit you down at some point during your life and said, honey, let me teach you how to resolve conflict properly. And let me teach you how to communicate with your husband. Let me teach you so that you don't end up in rows and fighting. My mother never did that. How I learned to resolve conflict is what I saw growing up. Is how I saw people resolve conflict. I just picked sense out of nonsense, take it, and then my personality added to that, right? Because in a relationship, listen, in a relationship, I never heard anyone, nobody ever taught me about conflict. But especially if you get married, you need to know how to deal with resolving conflict, right? In a marriage, you could have a somebody who's a little more passive, and you have the fighter, right? And a lot of times what happens, the person who is more passive, the one who's not so much of a fighter and arguer, they will end up being the one in the conflicts and in the arguments that kind of suffer wrong. But when you say you have two man rats, or you know that saying, two man rat can't live in one hole. When it have two man rats in the house, it's trouble. Real trouble. Row, fight, bacchanal, right? But we don't want that, right, guys? That's not what we want. We want to resolve conflict in a godly way, in a way that would not cause offense in your marriage, where you can't watch your husband in his eyes for more than 20 seconds because there's offense or the things in your heart that you're holding against him, right? We don't want that because you're with the man forever, right? Okay, so I'm going to read the scripture. This is a scripture that helped me in my life And not only in my marriage, majority of parents never teach children. That is correct, right? But in my life, but it is especially true for marriage, right? And we've taken this whole session. I want you all to keep these things in your mind that I'm about to read here in the scriptures, right? This is in Colossians chapter 3, verse 14. Verse 14, no, yes. And I'm reading the Amplified version. So the Amplified version kind of expounds on each word a lot more than the ordinary versions, right? But I like the word that they use here to describe peace. So it starts off saying, above all these, put on love and enfold yourself with the bond of perfectness, which binds everything together completely in ideal harmony, right? 15, this is the verse I want us to pay attention to, right, ladies? And let the peace, and peace being soul harmony, which comes from Christ, rule or act as an umpire continually in your hearts, deciding and settling with finality all questions that arise in your minds in a peaceful state, to which, as members of Christ's body, you are called to live. And be thankful and appreciative and give thanks always, right? So basically what this verse is saying, I want you all to picture this for me, right? Picturing things helps me. I have an active imagination, overactive. And so when people speak, I picture things, which could be really dangerous. It could be dangerous. My kind of overactive imagination. So you have to be careful what you're telling me, right? But I literally picture my husband and I arguing, fighting. And you all know what an umpire is, right? We have umpires in cricket, yes, football, and they have umpires in cricket, football, not too much into the sports, right? Let's just use those two. I wouldn't embarrass myself and try to say more. So, and I picture my husband and myself quarreling, and peace as an umpire. So let's say a third person there, which is peace. And every time, we're trying to resolve something, every time the argument starts to get to a place where it's no longer peaceful, it's no longer godly, I say something out of timing, he says something out of timing, the umpire there would say, okay, strike one, come take it back. That was wrong. You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have done that. So it's like having a third party in my marriage, always keeping me in check when it comes to trying to resolve issues, right? So that's what I say. Let peace, which is soul harmony, that comes from Christ, rule or act as an umpire continually in your hearts, deciding and settling with finality all questions that arise in your mind in a peaceful state as members of Christ's body, right? So first I want you to keep in your mind that it is possible, especially if you consider yourself a child of God, if you consider yourself a Christian or somebody who believes the Bible, you believe in God, it is possible. And in fact, what God requires of us, more than possible, it's actually what he requires of us to resolve conflicts in a peaceful manner, right? God not a wild man, right? God is not a wild man. God never said, God never said, I don't want you to have, there's no commandment saying I don't want you to have conflict, because he knew that is impossible. However, he does give us guidelines how to resolve conflict. And one of them is in peace, right? In peace. Hear this other scripture, right? This is in James chapter 3, verse 18. Hear what it says, right? Hear what it says, ladies. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. Now, what is really interesting about this scripture, the breakdown of righteousness here is will reap a harvest of justice and of all good things, right? So let me read it again. I'll read it with the definition of righteousness. Those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace, right? Because in the Bible, it talks about sowing and reaping. Not only in the Bible, it's a principle of life. If you plant a mango seed, you will reap a mango tree and you will get mangoes off of the tree. It's the same principle in life. Whatever you sow, the Bible says that will you also reap, right? So hear what it says. This is James chapter 3, verse 18. Those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of good things and of justice, right? So many times what we want when we say we're resolving conflict, what we really want is justice. We want to be heard, right? And ladies, you want your side of the story to come out. I want to be heard. I want justice. I feel like I was dealt an injustice. I'm mad and I want my side. I want him to hear, man. That's what you want. That's how people sometimes think that you need to start resolving a conflict, right? I want to be heard. I want my side of the story to be told. Because very rarely do people go into an argument, especially husband and wife, and you go in taking wrong. You're taking wrong. So you start off, because if you took wrong initially, if you took wrong right away, it would not be a conflict. If you start off the argument like this, or okay, honey, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Or whatever you want to call him, because you're mad, it might be honey. Say, hey, what's going on? I hear what you're saying. I was wrong. I was wrong. I should not have done that. I should not have said that. Please forgive me. And you start off like that. Most times it's not going to escalate. It will not be a conflict, right? Most of the time what will happen, he might get a heart attack because he's so shocked that that's how you start in the conversation. Because ladies, let it be real. Most of us, we want to be heard. We have plenty to say. We have plenty to say, and you just want to tell them, you just want to get them, right? So if you start off like that, it won't be a conflict. So we don't. But, right, if you do sow seeds of peace, the Bible is saying here, you will reap a harvest of justice and good things, righteousness. This is James chapter 3, verse 18, and I'm reading the NLT version, right? So if you want to reap justice, ladies, do you all feel, some of you all right now, do you feel like I need some kind of justice, that you wish that they could have a third party in your bedroom looking on? And at the end of the argument, if you feel like this sometimes, you could say, at the end of the argument, the person, the third party, they didn't say nothing through the argument. But when the argument done, that third person would say, okay, you was right. You was right. He wrong, you right. How many of y'all wish it had something like that, right? Had somebody like that. You was right. Or they watch him and say, he was right, you were wrong, right? The third party in your room or wherever it is you're arguing, third party is there. I don't know how many of you all know this, but when you get married and you make that covenant with your husband, do you know that you don't only make a covenant with your husband, but that you actually make a covenant with God as well? And your marriage is not only just you and your husband, it's you, God, and your husband. It's a threesome chord. So it's you, it's him, and it's God. And when you make your vows, the reason why weddings take place in a church, you'll have asked yourself a question: how come? I mean, you can go and get married in your red house too, but the person who's doing it still have to be some sort of justice or the peace or whatever. Funny name, right? Or whatever. I don't know who's doing it, but right. But most people get married in a church, no matter what religion they belong to, and there's a whole ceremony. You ever wonder why? How come weddings happen in a church? Ask yourself that. Why is it a church? Why is it a spiritual thing? Why is there a spiritual aspect to marriage? Why can't both of us? Now, some people do this. I like you, you like me. Let me just live together for the rest of your life. Now, let me don't bother with the foreman thing now. Let me just live. Let me just, right? The reason is, ladies, marriage, is an institute that God is the one that actually placed that institute there. Marriage was all his idea. And not only was it his idea, he wants to be the third party involved in your marriage. Hence the reason, if you're getting married and you want God to be a part of your marriage, you do it in a church, or you have somebody who's a priest or a pastor or whatever to do your ceremony, and you say some vows. You say it before witnesses and before God, right? You have witnesses to say, okay, yes, I did see the X and Y get married, and God is there also witnessing that before the witnesses and him that you are making a vow. Marriage is a very serious thing, right? So there is a third party in your marriage. Every time you quarrel, every time you cuss him, every time you push him, every time you call him names, every time you bring him down, every time you degrade him, ladies, you all hear me? Every time you degrade him, Every time you say the things that you know hurt him, and ladies, you all know you all are very good at that. You know the things that hurt your husband. You know the weak spots. You know the points that you can get him. And when you get into arguments, sometimes you push those buttons and you say the things that you know you're not supposed to say. But might I just remind you all that while this is happening, that God is there. God is a part of your marriage. And for those of you who claim to be children of God, not only is God there, the Holy Spirit there in your room, he is supposed to be inside of you. And he is a part of your marriage. And so when you become abusive to your husband, rude, disrespectful, dishonoring, and pull him down and all those things, there's no way God could be happy with you. There's no way. Ladies, there's no way, right? Which takes me to my next scripture. This is the last scripture, and then we're going to get into the points, right? This is in Matthew chapter 5, verse 23. This is the part of the Beatitudes, right? Here it is. This does not apply only to marriage. This applies for anything. But, man, even more so, your husband, right? Hear what it says. So if you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple, now this is this time, in modern times, this would read, if you are worshiping in church, if you are offering a sacrifice of praise, because we don't do sacrifice. We no longer make sacrifice. We don't have to make sacrifices unto God again, right? Burn incense, kill an animal, those kind of things, right? So this is talking about offering a sacrifice of praise or worship, or you're praying or whatever. You're in church basically and you're looking all holy and worshiping and stuff. If you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you. Now this is saying someone has something against you, right? Leave your sacrifice there at the altar and go and be reconciled to that person. Then come and offer your sacrifice to God. You see, this is one of the scriptures in the Bible that shows me that we into hypocrisy, but God not into hypocrisy, right? This is saying, if you remember, so you're in church, right? This is you in church. Oh, yes, Shaka Basha. Yes, Jesus, you are Lord. Oh, Jesus. Oh, and it's had to shake it, turn around. Wherever you look real, listen, you look real holy. You look, people say that woman on fire for God, right? But while you're doing that, you had a thought. Shucks, me and so, right? Well, let's use your husband. We're using your husband, right? My husband, or those of you not married, use whoever, this person really don't like me, boy, and the last interaction we had wasn't good at all, right? So remember, this person have ought against you. Hear what the Bible tells you to do. Hear what Jesus himself, this is Jesus, right? Talking. He say, drop your hand down, hush your mouth, and go and find that person and resolve the conflict and then go back to church. Now, to tell you how serious this is talking about, if the person have something against you, what do you think God wants you to do if you have something against somebody? Or we're talking about husbands and wives today. If you, right? This scripture is saying, if you just even remember that somebody has something against you, far more, ladies, if you of yourself, while worshiping, if it come to your mind, or while you're in church or whatever, you're praying, it come to your mind that, gosh, me and my husband argued last night, and I tell him this, that, and the other, and we ain't really solve it, not the situation ain't really, like there's a tension, it have a bitterness, it have a offense in your heart for your husband, right? What the Bible is saying, right, is it is more important to him, right, for you to stop your worship or whatever it is you're doing to him at the time, prayer or whatever, and go and resolve the issue and then come back. This is to show you guys this scripture. You can read it yourself. You gotta believe me, right? This is Matthew chapter 5, verse 23. I would encourage everybody on this call to read Matthew chapter 5 at some point in your life, sooner than later. It's called the Beatitudes, most of it, right? And it really shows you the heart of God. And a lot of the Beatitudes shows you that God is not into hypocrisy like we, his children, are sometimes, right? So this is showing me, this scripture here, ladies, shows me how serious God takes conflict and offense, when we have aught against each other, when we have some kind of thing in our heart against each other, and it's there, it is unresolved. What he's saying is that it is very important. All the scripture is saying really is that God wants you to see the importance of you mending any kind of situation, hate, unforgiveness, bitterness, whatever you have with your husband, of course, but also anybody in your life, ladies. It is important to God, right? And I know some of you think that it is your right to be angry and hold things against people, but not as far as God sees it. And you know why that is, ladies? There is nothing that God will hold against you. There's nothing that God holds against you. God actually says to us that my throne, listen, that the way to me is open. There's no veil anymore. You are welcome to come to God no matter what state you are in, right? And you ask him for forgiveness and he's going to forgive you. And so if we expect God to forgive us, we need to be able to forgive others too, far more your husband, right? So God sees these kinds of things, offense and this kind of conflict, ongoing conflict, as a serious thing. So much so that he said he'd rather you stop worshiping and go and fix your issues with people and your husband and then come back and worship him, right? So it's a serious thing, because what might start off as one little argument and unresolved conflict, because what happens in a marriage, right? Sometimes for peace sake, you don't resolve a situation. There's no end to it, because he feel you right, you feel you right. Nobody backing down. Good people have pride. Everybody just wants each other. Both parties want each other to see their point. Nobody trying to resolve or understand each other. But one person might realize this ain't going nowhere and they back down. But it does not mean that the issue has been resolved. And so as long as that unresolved issue is still a part of your marriage and still a part of your life, the likelihood is it will pop up again. And when you get into that argument, the next time it's going to be even worse. And every time you get into an argument about that situation, you build up more and more judgments in your heart about the person and why they're doing what they're doing, which we will get into soon, right? Careful with, yeah, right? So it's important, ladies, to be able to resolve conflict in a marriage, because sweeping it under the carpet is not, that's actually the easy way out. If it is an issue that keeps reoccurring, it needs to be dealt with. And a solution you need to come to a solution, right? You can't keep sweeping it under the carpet. That conflict gonna crawl from under that carpet someday and come back and bite you, but harder the next time, right? Excuse me. So here we go. What I have discovered, ladies, in counseling people a lot of times is that people know how to fight. Everybody know how to fight. Nobody teach you that, but you know how to fight. You know how to bring your points across. Am I lying, ladies? Right? You know what to say. You know what pitch to go to in your vocals. You know what to do to get your point across. You can fight. You can fight. Both parties can fight, right? But fighting and cussing and calling each other names is not an effective way to resolve the issue, right? So what I want to do is to help you to solve the problem without the fighting and the cussing and all the different things that happen along with that, and actually come to a solution so that this issue is no longer an issue. So it's not sweeping under the carpet. It's not just saying, you know what, I will just hush my mouth and take this for the rest of my life. Ladies, let me tell you something. If you say that to yourself, right? Now, there's some things that you have to do that. Let me just say, oh gosh, I forgot to say this. This is very important. Ladies, this is very important. You have to pick your fights wisely. Ladies, pick your fights wisely. Life is going to happen to you, right? Life will come at you. You'll have big issues. You'll eventually have big issues, right? pick your fights wisely. Do not fight about the toilet seat. Do not fight about the toilet paper, putting it back on the thing. You know, you're supposed to replace the toilet paper. Don't make that a fight, right? Do not fight about washing the wares. Do not fight about how to make up the bed. Those are not things that I would pick your fights wisely. Do not waste your time and energy on petty things like that, right? So you want to pick your fights. Those things, listen, not everything is worth a fight. Ladies, you might have grew up that way or whatever, but in a marriage, if you're gonna go down, that road about picking fights for toilet paper roll, toilet seat, listen, then you're gonna have fight upon fight upon fight upon. Your marriage you're gonna be tormented. Unless your husband is a perfectionist, and living with a perfectionist is not easy, right? I'm imagining here because my husband is far from a perfectionist when it comes to the tube of toothpaste, right? My husband used to tell me about that in the early, like those squeeze it in the middle, squeeze in the bottom, but he gave up that fight. He's a smart man. I used to argue about the wares, not even argue, but I would ask and ask and ask about washing the wares. It's in washing. I'm not going and fight about that. He wouldn't have. I'm not going to fight about that. The toilet seat was never an issue for me. If I go in the bathroom up, I slam it down, right? That was never an issue for me. Unless, of course, it's in the middle of the night and you're tired and you don't realize it up and you sit down on the nasty part, right? Then you get vexed, but still I'm not making that issue, right? But you get vexed and you slam it hard, whap, and you slam it hard to make sure he hear it and he wake up, right? And he know that you slam it down because it was up, right? All that wrong, eh? But you know how it is good. So things like that, I learned early in my marriage. I said, okay. So I said, okay. This man not bending. He's sticking to his ways, right? Otherwise, you'll go bananas. Yes, Justina, nice way of saying it, bananas. That sounds like an American way of saying going mad. You go bananas, you know. You don't really hear Trini saying that so much. I like it. I realized that my husband not bending with certain things because I don't know, his mother probably bring him up a brat or whatever. I don't say anything I never said before in public. I'm being transparent with you ladies. So, a lot of things he just never was accustomed doing, and he just never, he might make an effort now and again, and then it just lapses. So I realized that, okay, this is who I marry. This is the man. He might try, but he failing. So why go and do quarrel for the rest of my life? Those are small things. Don't sweat the petty stuff. Those are small things. So I give up. I give up that fight, right? Early too. I didn't waste my time with that, right? And trust me, the real fights came. At least I had energy for that. I mean, and yeah, but those things, right? How did I get there though? How did I get there? Let me read it. I might remember. Right. I was saying I want to help you to solve problems without fighting and ending in cussing and all that. But it doesn't always have to be a fight. I think with you ladies, I think we tend to be a bit too controlling at times, and we try to control too much of our husband's lives. We try to control every aspect of his life. Men don't like that. How many of you ladies would admit, if on the call, that you could be perhaps a little bit controlling? Let me see. If you think you're a little bit controlling, not plenty, you're just a little bit controlling. And if you want to be transparent, and a lot of us are, you can admit if you're controlling. Say, only kind of a little bit controlling. I am controlling, right? I could be controlling. But the thing with me, my husband cannot be controlled, but I am controlling, right? So it's like you come up against a wall when you try to control him. Yes, women tend to be controlling. And a lot of them treat their husbands like sons, trying to tell them what to do. Let me tell you something, ladies, no, marriage is a partnership. It is a partnership. And I think, the both parties, sorry, Vani says she's not controlling. I just tell him what to do. Same thing, darling. I try to tell my husband what to do, and he calls it controlling. You see, what you call just trying to help him, me and my husband have that talk all the time, up to today. Up to today, I would tell him, oh, he wants to go and eat, but he wants to go and eat in the bedroom, which I hate, but I don't try to stop him anymore. I actually bought a little sort of like a small table thing, tray with a tray, so that when he in the bedroom eating, he don't have to sit down on the bed. So he could sit down on the chair in the bedroom and he have that to rest the food on, right? But he came with the food in his hand to sit down on the chair and eat. And I was like, Kevin, why don't you get a waiter? Why don't you put it in a waiter? That way, if you're eating on a grain of rice fall, you're not gonna fall on the ground or on the chair, but fall in the waiter. You could always wash the waiter after, right? And he said, oh God, woman, you like to control everything I do, eh? And I'm like, how is that controlling? How? I don't see that as controlling. I see that as making a very brilliant suggestion to help both me and you, because you don't want rice on the chair, nor do I. But men are different to women. So I think it's who it was said it, Val, or somebody, Val, who said, I'm not controlling. I just try to help him, tell him what to do. It's as far as they're concerned, it is the same thing, right? It should be both ways. You should tell him what to do either, but they do it. Lord, these men, yeah. Khadija, listen. Well, my husband, listen, right? So they do see some of the help that we give as controlling. I was talking about marriage being a partnership, and that like what happens in the home should be discussed, right? Like, okay, I'm trying to think of something that my husband does that I don't do. It's difficult, but but it should be a partnership, and it should be that you all come up with the who does this, who does that, or whatever, right? But what I see women giving their husband like chores, and they get them to do it. Like they don't want to do it, and they get them to do it. I admire that. I admire that. My personality is, if I ask you once, twice, whatever, and I realize it not happening, I do it myself. I find a way to do it myself. And one of the ways, I'll tell you one of the conflicts that my husband and I had in our earlier years of marriage, right? Cleaning is neither of us good at cleaning and organizing and keeping a space clean and organized. None of us. I don't think anyone could. I don't know if he could say I was, or he could say I was. I honestly, I think we both the same, and that kind of worked to our benefit, right? Because if I was like a really clean, meticulous person, he would drive me crazy, and vice versa. But very early in our marriage, when I would quarrel with him and ask him to do certain things to help, and I realized that he wouldn't do it, or he would start off doing it and then he would stop. And I'm just not, ladies, I'm just not the kind of person to keep at you, like telling you, I can't do that, I can't do that. Men call that nagging. Honestly, it's not in me to just be naturally that way, right? So I would just want to give up. I would just want to give up and say, listen, I would do it myself, right? But that became impractical. Not practical, because in the early days of our marriage, I was working, I'm not working now, so it's easier. And what my husband said is, well, why you don't just hire somebody to help us clean? It's not like we struggling to say we can afford a little, however much a week to help for somebody to come and help you clean. He said you don't have to do it all. He said he wasn't demanding that I do everything and not helping. He was saying let somebody come and help out, somebody both of us comfortable with, come twice a week and organize the place so that it wouldn't be difficult for you to just upkeep, right? And that is what I did for some time, and then eventually I didn't have anybody. But if we didn't come to that conclusion, so I mean, throughout my marriage, I've had people come in and helping me to clean and organize because it's really just not in me, and sometimes it becomes too much. And he would be happy for me to bring somebody in. So that was a way of resolving that conflict that perhaps could have gone on forever, and I could have started coming to conclusions about him and why he's not helping me. Judgments, in fact, that would not have been true, right? So what I want us to do is to recognize what is causing the conflict and be able to come to a resolution to whatever that situation is. There's a solution at the end of the conversation, and that does not have to be a fight, right? Right. So Most times, ladies, the way you approach an argument from the beginning, you kind of predetermine the result. How it's not a result, but necessarily how that argument is going to go and how it's going to end, right? If you come in hot and sweaty, and your thinking is this, right? This is a wrong thinking. I'm going to go into like 3 laws of communication. There's more, but I'm gonna just deal with 3, right? But if you go into an argument, just for sake of, easy, I'm saying argument, right? If you go into an argument with this is your thinking, listen to this, ladies. You want to prove your point, right? You want to prove your point. You must be able to explain yourself, right? And they must see your point of view. And you also want to prove that you are right. So you want to prove your point, you want to explain yourself, you want them to see your point of view, and you want to prove to them that you are right. So if you going into the argument with those thoughts, you're already starting off in a bad way, right? I could call them out again. This is the reason for this is I want to explain myself. I want them to see my point of view. I want to prove that I'm right. And I want them to see, so I want them to see your point. Everything is about you, right? You're going wrong already, right? So with that said, let's start with the 3 points, the 3 laws of communication. I'm not saying there are 3 laws. I'm going through 3, right? Before we go into it, just note this, ladies, right? There are certain times and types of arguments and the way the argument starts off, if it's very heated and both of you are very aggressive and very angry and irate, most times that time when you're in that kind of mood, nothing could get issue. Nothing could get issue. No issue could get solved. There's no solution could come out of that because it's just too hothead, throwing words at each other, cussing out each other. So there is a time where you could just say, and this is not chickening out, but for better reason and understanding that this is not going to go nowhere, you could tell the person, here what's going on. We can't have this discussion now. This is not making any sense. It's not making any sense. Let's leave this for another day when both of our heads clear, right? And where it's not like sometimes it's hard when it's in the heat of the moment and something now happened, right? But if you go into it at those times, it's okay. What you're going to do, you just want to fight, you just want to be heard, or do you want the conflict to be resolved? You have to have that thought in the back of your mind. If it's just that you just want your point to come across and you want to be heard, then it will be a rah-rah fight out. Because you rah-rahing, and he rah-rah. It's just, or they just want to hear each other. Nobody wants the issue to be fixed. So when it's like that, ladies, my suggestion is to say, let's do this later. I can't do this now. I can't, not being disrespectful. I'm not trying to ping you off or whatever. But how I'm feeling right now, I think it's best we have this discussion another time, right? I remember in my 20 years of marriage, there was only one time that I felt so angry that I had to leave the house. I was so angry that I knew that if I started arguing, and if I started, the things that I was going to say would have caused, listen, and I think I spoke about this not only in the last session, maybe a few sessions back too. I knew that what was going to come out my mouth not only would have been irreversible, it would have caused more damage in my marriage because of how hurt I was feeling. It would have caused more damage in my marriage. It would have made that issue that was happening at that time, it would have made it 10 times worse. And it probably would have set us back rather than take us forward. It wasn't gonna, I was mad. And so in that one time, I remember just jumping in the car. I don't think I even said anything. I just went in the car and I took a drive and I parked up by myself a little bit, talked to the Lord, cried, do whatever I had to do, and then I went back home, right? I knew that staying there and getting how I was, you see, you had to know yourself too. And I knew that I couldn't, there's no way I could have there's nothing productive would have come out of me or that situation if I opened my mouth. And so my situation, my solution at that point was to, let me take myself out of this right now and come back with a clearer head. One time in my 20 years, I had to do that because I'm generally a person, this is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. But I would take, and I would take. So I would, if I see things not going anywhere in terms of like the argument or whatever, I would just eventually hush and settle for no resolution. But I will hush and I would stay quiet for as long as I could, or I would go in a corner in the house, I'll do something by myself. I don't have to trash it out there. I would, if I realize it's not going anywhere, I would just start. He would just realize, wait, no, it's just him talking, and I stop. And then you say, okay, that's how you're going, because he know that's not really right either. But it's my way of just saying, I done. I done, I can't do no more. I don't have to go to the end. Because, you know, yeah. Anyway, so so the first point, this is not a law of communication, but I'm just saying this is a side note. There's a time where you have to just say, no, not now. This can't happen now. Things too heated. I'm too hurt. I'm too bitter. And you don't want to say the things that are in your heart or in your mind because you know what will happen and you just let it go, right? But this is the first law of communication. I don't know if you've ever heard this before. You could probably write it down. Always seek to understand before seeking to be understood, right? Now, how many of y'all could say y'all actually do that? So most of y'all go into the argument like how I said before. I want to say my piece. I want to prove a right. I want you to hear me out. I want you to understand me. Everything is about you and what you want to get across, right? But one of the first laws of communication, especially when you're resolving conflict, is always seek to understand first rather than to be understood, right? Picture yourself, you're about to, this is what we do. You're like by a starting line, like you're gonna run a race and you get in position. And as that gun go off or whatever, you start saying to yourself, you come into the argument saying, I want you to understand me. I want you to hear me out. So you can't hear anything the person is saying. In fact, you don't want to hear anything the person is saying, right? You're coming in hot, blazing with your points, with your view, with your opinions, right? Rather than wanting to understand the person's point of view as well, right? Excuse me. Whether you are right or wrong, you give the person the impression that you don't care what they have to say. You want to be heard. So many times, no, not every person is like this, but many times women do tend to be like this because women love to talk. They love to just, they want to be heard, right? And so the impression that your husband will get, or your boyfriend, or whoever it is you're fighting with, is that you don't care about me. You just want to talk. You just want to say your piece. You just want to be heard. You don't even want to understand. You just go in rah, 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 rah. And that person just have to listen and try to get in little bits and stop you and try to say, right? So seek to understand where they're coming from, right? If your first response is, now ladies, this is wrong. We think that because you think you are right, in your heart, you are sure you are right. So your first response in the argument is, well, I'm not the person at fault here. I'm not the one who do so. It's you who do so. So that you think that because they are at fault, that gives you the right to just dominate the conversation, or let's say argument, and they don't have a time to explain because you have already determined that they are wrong and you are right. And so you start off the argument wrong, right? It's you the one do it, it's not me. So I am the one who have to, right? That's a wrong way, right? Who is right or wrong does not matter if you want a peaceful resolution. Some ladies, remember, this is somebody you're living with for the rest of your life. This is your husband. Many times, ladies, who is right and who is wrong is not the important thing. It is, are we going to be able to come to a solution? What is knowing if I right or you right or I wrong or you, what is that really going to do? If at the end and we realize, okay, it was you wrong, it still have the conflict still has not been resolved. You're still in square one. You ain't take off from square one yet. And if this situation were to happen again, you'll just end up in another argument. There's no resolution. There's no end to it. You just keep going and going and going. So it's not, ladies, you have not won the fight if all that has come out of it as the end is that it's your fault. I was in the right and you was in the wrong. And you take a whole 2 hours to do that. You take cussing, name calling, all kind of thing to do that. But yet you all have not dealt with the root of the problem. So the root's still there. The root still planted deep, 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 which means that thing, that problem, that issue, that hurt, that bitterness is still going to continue to grow. You have not uprooted it, right? It's still there. All you have done is prove a point or got him to admit to something. That's not conflict resolution, and that's not what you want in your marriage. You want for this situation to stop happening. You want peace. You don't want this to happen again. So we argue wrong. We fight wrong. So getting the point across and coming out and saying, well, who right, who wrong? Waste of time. Is how we going to fix this. Because when he discovered, because what most of y'all as women want, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, you want him to admit he's wrong and say, okay, it's my fault, I will fix it, I will stop it, I will never do it again. Am I right? Ladies, that's what you want. For the end of him say, okay, girl, you right. I wrong, I'm not gonna do this again, I'm gonna stop, that's it, that's done. Argument, you win. I am wrong. You are right, right? That's what you want. For him to say, I am the stupid one. I am the one making the mistake. I'm the one doing the bad things here, right? And you right. Listen, that is, if that's all you get him to say, right? And he, especially if he said like that, it means he doing what I do sometimes. He just come into a place where he said, you know what, I done this woman like this not never gonna end. So I'm going to say what she want to hear me say. Is that what you really want? Just for him to say what you, no. You want to know that the person can actually understand where you are coming from, right? It's just for you to hush. And that's not what you want. You don't want somebody just telling you what you want to hear just for you to hush. You actually want the situation resolved, ladies. So maybe your approach needs to be different, right? Your approach needs to be different. Hear what to start saying instead, ladies, right? Instead of starting off with accusations, start off saying, I'm not sure I understand why you did this, or I'm not sure I understand why you said this, or maybe I don't understand. Or start off by saying, here what's going on. I really want to understand why you did this, right? Instead of judging the person and telling them their reasons for doing what happened. You already make a pre-assessment and you judge and you know why. Instead of doing that, or instead of just trying to get your point across, start by saying, John, Michael, Peter, whatever your husband's name is, boyfriend, I really, really want to understand you here. I really want to understand you, right? One of the things like when people ask me about marriage and they say, so Nix, what's the biggest thing in marriage? What's the biggest thing you think you need to help your marriage to be successful, to help your marriage to be happy or whatever? Very early on in my marriage, I would tell people, understanding the other person, understanding why they do what they do. And now I used to say the other person, but now that I'm more mature, I would also say even understanding me, even understanding why I do the things that I do and why I say the things that I say and why certain things that he does makes me feel hurt. Because ladies, hear this, right? Not everything that your husband does or says to you that makes you feel hurt means that he is doing it with the intention to make you feel hurt. It could be that you have an insecurity, that in that area you have a problem, something that you have not resolved within yourself, right? And I'll give you all 2 examples of that. It's understanding your partner is extremely important. It would take away a lot of the judgments that we pass on the person, right? This was even before I was married to my husband. No, my husband is, well, I was going to say he claims to be, but he is. He's quite intelligent, right? Much more so than me in some areas. And he used to teach, right? He had a school and he used to teach. Not a school teacher. He owned a school and he used to teach, right? IT technology, things that, I mean, if I try real hard, I don't understand, but yeah, technical stuff, right? And he would have a way when he would talk to me, he would say, when we get him talking, like especially when he's talking a lot, he would stop and say, I don't know if you can understand what I mean. And he used to say, I don't know if you could understand what I mean. He would say that like at intervals while we talking, right? And when he said it the first couple of times, I made a judgment, right? This is what I felt why I felt he was saying that, is that he was saying that, okay, because he is so intelligent, that perhaps what he's saying, I cannot understand because I'm not as intelligent as him. And so when he would say that, I would feel offended. But for a very long time, I didn't tell him. In fact, how I realized that that's not what he was doing, we were with a close friend talking, sometime like long after, he would only make that statement when we get into like a serious talk, not an argument, but like a serious talk about something, right? I don't know if you could understand what I say. And he was talking to this person, three of us, and it was a discussion, we discussed it and stuff. And he said, I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying to the person. And so I stopped in a moment and I'm like, okay. And then the talk went on and he said it again, right? Now, even then, I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say, well, this is how I feel when you say that to me. I just observed. I was like, okay, so he's saying it to this other person too, right? And then as time went on, I realized that this was people have just a thing that they say. Okay, he would say, I don't know if you could understand what I'm saying. It's like somebody talking and saying, you understand me? You understand? You understand? They're not, like it's almost like a slang. It's just a part of your language. You're talking and saying, hey, you understand what I'm saying? You understand? People in the street might say that or whatever. And I realized that, wait now. This statement he's making, it's not directed towards me. He's not literally asking me or telling me, sorry, that he don't know if I could understand what he's saying. It's just like something that, it's like basically saying, you understand me? While you're having a deep conversation with somebody. But ladies, it offended me. Until I realized that it was something that he does to everybody. It's just a term. He's not literally asking if he could understand. I was offended thinking that he was saying that I perhaps can't understand him because we're on different levels. And when I did share it with him, right, unfortunately, because men can be insensitive at times, his reaction was hilarious laughter. His reaction was just laugh. He just laughed. He laughed. It was like he threw back his head and laughed. And he was like, you cannot be serious right now. Because it was the furthest thing from his mind. It was literally just words coming out his mouth. In fact, ladies, he was not even aware that he said that in between when he was having discussions. He wasn't even aware that he would say that. It's one of those things you just say. And so, but I made a judgment. I didn't know why he said that, but instead of telling him how I felt, ladies, which many times we do, when I felt that initial thing, like, okay, what is he trying to say? Am I, instead of coming to him and saying, whenever you say that, I don't know why you're saying it. This is what I should have done. I don't know why you keep saying, I don't even understand what I'm saying. But when you say it, I feel a bit hurt. I feel like you're saying that maybe I am not as intelligent as you. So you won't understand what I'm saying. I should have said that. And early in our relationship, he would have laughed hilariously then and explained it to me, but it's just that I let it go on. And it's only when I actually saw it happening with somebody else. So understanding why your spouse or anybody, a boyfriend, anybody in a close relationship, understanding why they do what they do is important. I said something before that, right? Whoa, it's 9:15. I said something before that. It was a bit of a tongue twister, right? But I want to say it again, right? When your husband or boyfriend or significant other says something to you, right? You might feel a particular way about it. You might feel hurt, genuinely hurt, right? But it doesn't mean that that person intended to hurt you or even knows that they're hurting you. Sometimes you are dealing with something internally yourself, something that you need to fix, something that you need to take care of, right? It's not that the person was intending to be hurtful to you, right? So ladies, it's important to understand him and it's important to understand you. Why certain things hurt you, why, excuse me. I am the one who had a problem, not him. I am the one who had a problem and a preconceived notion that, okay, he's so intelligent and into IT and stuff, and these are not things that I am into. So I felt insecure, but he never felt that way about me or looked at me in that way. I was the one with the problem, right? Not him. But because of how I felt, I judged him and judged his motives, right? And ladies, we do that all the time, right? We do it all the time. So seek to understand why and stop making judgments, right? Which takes me to the other point. That was number one. Seek to understand rather than to be understood. Number two is do not start your communication and have discussions based on judgments, right? Discuss facts and discuss what actually happened rather than what you think happened or what you think, why you think, sorry, he did what he did to hurt you. So discuss facts. So when you get into the talk, right, you should never start by saying, okay, you should never start off the conversation or the argument by saying, you wanted to make me feel, you're trying to make me feel stupid, so you did X, Y, Z, right? Instead, that's judging the person's motive. You don't know it was that he was trying to make you feel stupid. You don't know it's that he was trying to make you feel jealous. You don't know the reason why he did what he did. It's not because he didn't love you. A simple thing like asking your husband to do something for you. Like the little things he spoke about before. And you ask him once, you ask him twice, you ask him 3 times, and he don't do it. You can't approach him after and say, well, you don't care about me. You don't care about me. You don't take on nothing I ask you to do is because you don't care about me. You don't see me as important in your life. That is making a judgment. You can't start an argument like that. Rather, you have to say, why it is you do, why I don't understand. Say, please help me understand. Like I said before, please help me understand why it is you don't like to do X, Y, Z when I ask you to do it. And then tell him how it makes you feel. Right? Say, listen, it's make me feel like you don't care about me. You know, when I ask you to do this and that and you don't do it, it makes me feel like you don't care. Rather than saying you don't care, that's why you do it. Right? You can't judge. You can't start off the You can't start off the argument with a judgment. You're starting off really bad there. You can't tell him why he's doing what he's doing. Let him explain. Try to understand his point of view, right? Your response in a situation and how hurt you feel is based on your judgment of why it was said or done, right? That is a good example of the petty thing that I was hurt about that had absolutely no truth in it, none. There was no truth. I was walking around feeling hurt and insecure, and there was absolutely no reason for me to be. Thank God it was resolved before we even got married. There's something up to today, Kerwin would say, right? I don't know if you can understand me, right? But I went off on a judgment in my own mind, right? So don't assume, ladies, you need to ask. You need to ask and say how you felt, how whatever he did made you feel, right? You have the right to say, this is how I feel, but you don't have the right to say, you intended to make me feel this way. So you have all rights, ladies, to say, but you make me feel unloved. I feel like you don't love me. I feel like you don't love me. Don't say to your husband, because he did something, you don't love me. I know you don't love me. You never love me. Right? And listen, I hear ladies who are even married make this statement about their husband. He don't love me. And when you ask them, why you say he don't love you? Well, he don't do this, he don't do that, he don't do, right? And when you ask him, did you ever tell him that you feel as though that these things make you feel unloved or these things make you feel unappreciated? Have you ever told him that, you know, in the moment when he says or does these things, and they'll say, well, I'll tell him, but ladies, many times it's the way we tell him, right? Now, oh gosh, ladies, please, I didn't mention this earlier and I should have. I know we have some ignorant men out there. I know there are some men that my discussion here is based on if you have a rational husband, if you have somebody who actually want to resolve conflict. I know that there are some men who don't even care to resolve conflict, right? They're happy to just live their life and you live yours. And so they enjoy their life outside. They come home, they're sour. They don't want to, it's an arrangement. It's no longer a marriage. But I'm talking about two people who still love each other and they still want their marriage to work, right? We're trying to work on resolving conflict. But I know that there are unreasonable men, irrational, ignorant, who you can't get through to them, right? And so you might be listening and thinking, that song is nice, but I can't even reach I can't even reason with him to say these kind of things, right? And so you may need another level of help. You might need a third party, you might need counseling, right? Because I know sometimes it gets to a point where it's like a breaking point. Nobody taking advice from anybody. Nobody wants to resolve anything. It's like just pure hate and acting normal in the house, right? And so you might need intervention. You might need to get help. But there's a lot of marriages where it's just that you all don't know how. You don't know how, or you've been doing it the wrong way for a long time, right? You've been coming into the fights with the wrong attitude, wrong mindset. And so I'm hoping that we could just fix those things so that your marriage could have peace, like we read earlier, and that you could resolve conflict with your husband, right? So ladies, you don't have the right to tell him, you have the right to tell him how you feel, but you do not have the right to tell him that he intended to make you feel this way. That's making an assumption, right? What happens here what happens, and this ends up being a kind of twisted thing, right? What happens here, you end up fighting about your judgment and not the actual real issue, right? So you end up, so this is, you're going to the argument saying, you don't care about me, you don't love me, and now he has to defend that. So let's say what he did was, okay, let's say what he was supposed to come home to take care of the kids because you were not feeling well. You were feeling sick. And you ask him to come home a little early today so that he could relieve you of watching the kids so that you could get some rest, right? And he didn't make it home early. He didn't make it home early, right? And you, as he walked through the door, now on top of him not making it early, remember you're feeling sick and you're tired. You've seen about children. So as he walked through the door, your first words out your mouth is, you see, you don't care about me, you don't care one damn thing about me. Now I saying damn, but I know your use of vocabulary will be a lot more colorful in these situations, right? You don't care about me, and you don't care about this, and you don't love me, and I always know you this, and I always know you that, and I always know, and you start to pelt accusations like mad, like crazy, right? And the argument now becomes about him defending your judgment, because now he has to say, but how you could say I don't care about you? How you could say I don't care about you? I just do this for you and that for you and that for you, and he telling you the things that he is doing to perhaps make your life easier or whatever it might be. And you'll end up arguing about your judgment, right? The judgment that you place on him rather than the actual situation at hand, which is the fact that he didn't come home early enough to take care of the children, right? And that is not something that is unresolvable. That is something that you could actually work out. That is something that you could actually fix, right? And so instead of sitting and having a discussion to avoid that happening in the future. Now, ladies, if it is every single time you ask your husband to come and help you with the kids because you're tired or you're sick or whatever, and he's never doing it. Remember, everything I'm talking here within reason, right? So I'm not talking if you have an unreasonable, irresponsible husband who really doesn't care. There are some people who really would show you that they don't care. They might even tell you, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about two people who actually love each other here, right? And so you'll never actually get to discussing why he came late. And even if he tell you, you pass your judgment and you are so convinced that even if he tell you why he was late and it's a good reason, you do not believe him. You don't believe him because you already make a decision in your heart why he do it, and you don't want to hear nothing. He can't even explain himself, right? Ladies, don't judge. The Bible actually says, if you judge, you would be judged. And the same measure that you judge people, it be judgment would come back to you. So judging is assuming the motives of somebody's heart. Do not assume motives. Try to understand, try to reason, try to understand why, and try to come to a solution, but don't judge. Don't start off with them kind of, and we love to use those lines, ladies. Huh? You don't care about me, you don't love me, you only care about this, you care about your mother more than me, or you care about this, you care about your job more than me. Unfruitful conversations. Those words are it's not getting you anywhere. Not if you really love your husband and you want your marriage, right? You need to approach it differently and start asking questions instead of making accusations and trying to come to a solution, right? You actually start to experience all the emotions that go along with your judgment, even without knowing the truth. So even without knowing the truth, ladies, before he walked through the door, you're vexed because he didn't come on time. And you sit down there feeling hurt and perhaps even crying, saying, this man don't really love me, don't care. You experiencing real emotions that came from a judgment and has actually no basis and no truth. Crying. And when he come in, he's like, what are you crying for? Because you don't love me. You don't care about me. You don't. And the men is be like, when women come up with these emotions, the men is like, what am I dealing with here, boy? How just so I don't love you? And the poor man like, how I want to deal with a psycho? Sorry, not psycho, but like, what, what? He didn't even get to explain himself, but you're waiting by that door for him to come in, right? All you know what I'm talking about. It's like you're literally waiting for that door to crack. And as it open, you're gone. And the man is like, ooh, what I just walk into, boy. Ladies are lying. Isn't that sometimes how we approach what we hurt about what happened, but instead of trying to work out why this is happening all the time, why am I feeling hurt, we just start to judge the man. And we just listen, when we see that key turn, it's like we are in the start line and we're just waiting to give him. We're just waiting to rattle off and tell him, give him a piece of our mind and tell him how we feel, right? And your emotions real, even without the truth. Okay. The third part in the effective communication, and I want you all to be able to ask questions or make comments. I went longer than I wanted to, is to try to come to a solution, not really who is right or wrong in the situation, but rather how can we fix this? Because if your plan is to be with this man forever, while you both, as long as you both shall live, then you want to fix things. It's not, you don't want to be right. You don't want him to come to the point where he realizes, okay, you were right, you always right. You don't, that is like music to a woman ears, for a man to say you always right and mean it. That's not, that shouldn't be your end game. It should be to fix whatever the problem is. And so if, however, you're communicating does not get issues fixed and that thing keeps coming up, then you're not being effective in the way you're communicating and you need to change it. And why keep doing the same thing over and over? Why keep having these shout outs? Why keep making the accusations if you know how they're always going to end, ladies? It doesn't make sense. Not if you want your marriage to work, not if you want to live in peace, not if you want to live in peace, right? So just the 3 points that I went through quickly. Always seek to understand rather than to be understood. And listen, that helped me in my marriage. I just give you one tiny little example about the term that he would use. But I made judgments many times about why I think my husband is doing something and I have been wrong, right? And now that I understand him, there's certain things just does not, the thing itself hasn't changed. He might still be doing it or whatever, But because I understand why, and I know it is not it's not a reflection of how he feels about me, or it does me, don't love me, it makes it's better because I understand why he's doing what he's doing, right? Many times too, we have to understand that the people that we are married to, they are not perfect. And just how sometimes we feel broken, that person could have a bit of brokenness in them too. And so that they relate to you from that point. And when you understand why, like sometimes knowing the person's background with their mother and their father and how they grew up is important because it helps you to understand why they do certain things, why they react in situations a certain way. And you realize, so, and it makes you feel better that, okay, it's not that he's doing this because of me, or he don't love me, or this is something that he needs to deal with, right? And understanding that and helping your husband to fix these issues is a much better plan than just quarreling with him every time the situation comes up, right? So seek to understand rather than be understood. Do never start an argument or discussion based on an opinion or a judgment that you made. Discuss facts. Ladies, discuss facts rather than what you think happened, or try and assume why he did what he did. Discuss facts. The fact of the matter is, you asked him to come home a certain time and he didn't. He came late. That's the only fact you know. You can't say it's because he don't love you or he don't care or whatever, or he having an affair. Some of them might go fast to say he having an affair. You cannot make those judgments. Discuss the facts and try to find out why, the truth as to why, and try to come to a solution. And the last one is, most of these talks and conflicts are supposed to end with how can we fix this? So you may not be able to fix it right then and there, but it's supposed to end where both of you come to a point where you say, okay, these are the facts, this is what happened, this is how I feel, and this is how I feel. How can we fix this? So that this part of aspect of our lives comes to an end and we're no longer dealing with this situation, right? So ladies, I hope that this was helpful. Of course, there are much more tools in communication and stuff, but there's no way I could get into all. But this is certainly going to help you. I want to give you all an opportunity because I saw people type in, but I couldn't really read the comments. I want to give you all